Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Dalton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back into Operation Domination. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, with the full crew here today. Adam LaRue and Chase Thornton to my right. And it's great to talk football for week 12. Look, we're going to get to the Starship questions. We're going to talk about some Dynasty temperature checks. We're going to talk about some DFS cocktails. And hopefully through it all, I know that we are kind of in a pivotal point in your fantasy football seasons where, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but like those guys jostling for playoff positions, you're all in it right now. And on top of it, to add fuel to the fire, most fantasy leagues out there, their trade deadlines this week, or at least the Tuesday of the week 13 coming up. So like 7 days, 6 days, basically, if you're going to make a trade, you're going to have to do it now. It gets real tight because you got to find the right trade partner and everyone's jostling for position. So here's my advice to you guys on that standpoint. Don't think about winning the trade. Just get the value that you need. Figure out, okay, what do I need in what position to make this run? What can I give up? And don't be afraid to make a sacrifice in order to get that player, because this is no time to sit back and hope that something makes itself available on the waiver wire. This has all been picked over at this point. It is your last chance to actually make a significant jump in your team. So that's my word of advice for you guys as we get the show kicked off on Operation Domination. Make sure you download your favorite podcast app. Make sure you check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net. All right, gents, let's dive right into this thing because everybody wants to know everything. And Chase, I tailor-made this first question for you just to give you a bone because, look, as awesome as I am, okay, I do make mistakes every once in a while.
Yeah, you do. Wait, I didn't say that out loud. Come on.
And you both beat me up on the whole Tet McMillan and DK Metcalf thing, and I knew it. I knew it was going to happen about first quarter.
It was readily apparent fairly soon.
Fairly quickly. So I said this to you guys in the chat. I want to say it on the show. I don't know what it is about Atlanta's defense, but we have 3 games in a row of Bryce Young just like, yeah, I put up like 400 yards and 3 touchdowns when I play these birds. Nobody else.
It's the NFC South. All the NFC South teams, when they play each other, are like normal teams. And then outside of Tampa Bay, if they play anyone else, they're horrific.
Bryce Young literally put up 2.4 and 4 fantasy points in the 2 weeks prior to Atlanta, where he drops 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sorry, I didn't have that on my bingo card. Didn't have it on my bingo card. In light of that, the first question is this: Bryce Young or Tyler Shough as my Week 12 streamer in a 14-team league. 14-team leagues are brutal. I didn't know yours was going to be this brutal. But Chase, like I said, I tailor-made this question for you because if you wanted an opportunity to gloat on your Bryce Young, this is your chance.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to gloat, but I do know what Adam's argument is going to be for this, and I'm going to say that my answer is Bryce Young for this week, as if everybody was shocked. History be damned at this point, Adam. I have to dive in on Bryce, and I don't even know why. It defies all logic and defies all reason when I look at it. But at this point, I mean, I don't know. I need another cause du jour to chase, but right now it's Bryce Young. So in a 14-team league, streaming a quarterback this week, I'll take Young over Shough. I mean, ECR-wise, Young is ranked just barely ahead of him right now, not by much. I mean, it's essentially a toss-up, even if you want to go by the ranking there. But Young does have the better matchup in terms of points surrendered to opposing fantasy quarterbacks here. San Francisco's given up the 10th most points to opposing fantasy quarterbacks. Atlanta has given up 18th most points, and that's what Shough is going against there. Shough has been better than Rattler since he took over in terms of like not taking sacks. I mean, he's taken 5 in the last 3 games, but Rattler was taking like 4 a game. when he was in there. So Shough is better about that. Atlanta can pass rush though. They can crank it up. I mean, they've got 34 sacks, or second most in the league in that. We've seen them be able to disrupt teams and kind of kick some butt that way. But they did, even though Young got to them last week, they got to him 5 times. They sacked him 5 times. So I'm not expecting another touchdown or yardage explosion like we saw to Bryce Young last week. But San Francisco's pass rush is pretty weak. This game has one of the higher point totals of the weekend here, and I think Carolina's going to have to pass because I do expect the 49ers to be playing from in front. So in this matchup, not to gloat, but I will take Bryce Young over Shough just for this weekend.
If you're wondering, am I forcing this one? I absolutely am. Adam, go with your answer.
Yeah, so he kind of beat me to the punch. I got 8 Mile a little bit here. Look,
easy to do when you have the outline.
yeah, that is how that works. I'm taking Tyler Shough. It's my honest answer to whoever's question this is like, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. But so my reasoning on the Young side, Young has had 15 plus points in back-to-back games has had 15 plus points. So following a 20 plus point performance exactly once in his career. In other words, he has finished with higher than QB 17, never following a top 12 performance. So he has never been startable in back-to-back weeks, not once in his 2.5 seasons as a starter. That's a problem. That's problem number 1. Okay. We can go other hand. This season, he has not thrown 200 plus yards in back-to-back games. Not once this season so far. He's actually only done it twice, and the other one was in like week 3. Before playing Atlanta this past week, the last time he had thrown more than, actually not even more than, exactly 30 passes was week 5. He has been in the 20s and teens of pass attempts from week 12 or week 11, to week 5. It was 6 weeks. 25 pass attempts. Hard to get fantasy production, even if, regardless of my opinion of the quality of Bryce Young, it's hard to get fantasy points on 25 pass attempts. It's hard to do. The run game has been good. Dowdle's been awesome. And even Hubbard has had his moments this season. And it seems like he's getting closer to being healthy. So that's the Bryce Young part of it. I don't believe that you're going to get, color me shocked if you get more than 15 points out of Bryce Young this week. I guess the way that I'm going here, which good for you, Dan, since you're playing him. On the Shough side, he's playing the team that just gave up 400 yards to Bryce Young. So on that hand, I feel pretty good about it. And the advanced analytics for Bryce Young, or for Tyler Shough, there's some positives to take away. It's got a 4.8% big time throw rate. That in the NFC South, that's second behind Baker Mayfield. You expected it to be behind Baker Mayfield. Then the turnover-worthy play rate is at 1.1%, which is the lowest outside of Kirk Cousins, and he doesn't count. He's fake. ADOT is 2.5 yards higher than Bryce Young, by the way. It's at 9.9 versus 7.3. 7.3 is a good yards per attempt, not ADOT. So it just, on the whole, I'm not going to tell you Tyler Shough is a top 12 or even top 20 quarterback, but I feel more comfortable saying that he breaks 15 points than I do with Bryce Young. And that's the bar that I'm setting for this conversation. So
averaging 8 points a game, averaging 8.1 points a game. But yeah, it's all right.
What's Bryce Young over the last month, even with the 30?
12 something. Actually, over the last month, he's higher than that over the last month. Oh, see you, Dan. Dan couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle the Bryce Young talk anymore.
And to be fair to Shough, the 5-point game that he had against Tampa Bay, he came out a half.
True.
Came out a half. So that's
yeah. I mean, like you said, this is a sad situation for whoever is trying to figure out, their quarterback situation for the week, because I don't want to have to be relying on either one of these guys. 14-team league, though, 4 teams on bye, including Knicks and Herbert. Daniels is out anyway, but I mean, there are some usable fantasy quarterbacks that are off this week, and in a 14-team league, you might be scraping the barrel during bye weeks, but scraping up Bryce Young, and as much as I have thumped the table for him, scraping up either Bryce Young or Tyler Shough is not where you want to be at this point. So,
to be honest with you, I'd feel not good about starting either of them in a super flex league. Like that's where I'm.
Super flex, I'm still in on Young. Super flex as a low end quarterback too, but I'm hoping that you're balancing him with somebody on the upper end of the QB1 range.
It gets brutal with that. Look, I'm in a 14-team league and I got Jordan Love, and I've been trying to get a quarterback to pair with him the entire season. And other than Cam Ward, nothing else is even really available. So I'm going to weigh in on what side I fall in on this. And it is slightly, ever so slightly, to the Bryce Young side, because I have him ranked at 20 and Tyler Shough at 22. So Adam, you made a few interesting points, but here's my feedback on it. One, while Bryce Young has maybe only performed once with 15 points after a 20-point performance, Tyler Shough has only gotten 15 points once in his entire career so far.
Out of 2 starts.
3.
That's a way better ratio.
2.5 plays, sure.
Don't call Dan out on a small sample size. Come on
Just saying. But here's a not so small sample size. So even after Bryce Young put up the 400 yards that he did, Atlanta is still in the top 12 in passing yards per play allowed.
Yeah.
For the least amount. This is not typically a defense that you're throwing a ton on. And I'll add this in there. Divine Diablo, their top star linebacker, is back this week. And that's huge because that defense was looking like it was becoming a real thing before he got injured. Now you add him into the middle, on top of the fact that they stabbed their pass rush. Like I said, they had 5 sacks anyway. On top of the fact they're a defense that you're typically not throwing a ton on to begin with. And that Tyler Shough, going back to college, is absolutely and utterly awful when under pressure. Just completely dead. The 49ers, not only, to Chase's point, have they given the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers, but they've allowed the 6th most passing yards per play. You buried the lead, Chase. Jacoby Brissett broke the freaking NFL record this past weekend with 47 completions. If Jacoby Brissett can do it, I'm not going to roll it out for Bryce Young. I'm not saying he's going to, but just not going to roll out.
Well, would Tyler have done it? Because I feel like that's the better comparison.
No, come on.
Yeah, that's kind of touche. That's a fair point.
Bryce Young does have 3 passing touchdowns in 3 separate games this year. It's not out of the quiet. It's not weird for him to be able to throw multiple touchdowns. But your point that you made, Adam, about him only throwing 25 times a game, that's a very good point in a matchup like this. The counter I'll say to all of this that I didn't mention earlier is that the New Orleans game, the New Orleans Atlanta game, does have the 2nd lowest overall point total on the week too. It's supposed to be a close game. I don't necessarily know that they're going to try and throw a ton with Shough, or that they're going to be able to. So yeah,
it's going to be an ugly football game. And
don't let Dan drive a wedge between us, Adam. He's just trying to get back at us for winning the challenge last week. So, I mean, yes, it's a showdown, but brotherly love.
Dance puppets dance. We spent entirely too much time talking about Bryce Young and Tyler Shough. So let's move on to the next question here, shall we? I've got the number 1 waiver wire, and this is somebody who's asking me. So I got the number 1 waiver wire pick. J.K. Dobbins is on IR. Josh Jacobs is banged up. Do I burn it on Isaiah Pacheco, who's expected to be back this week and was back at practice, or Beshad Tutton as my running back to finish the season? Adam, where do you fall on this one?
Well, I'm not going to bury the lead. I don't think either of these guys are solving your problems. That's first and foremost. I'd consider the trade deadline if you still have it. Otherwise, between the two, purely to answer the question, direct answer, Tutton. Here's why. We've seen nothing out of Pacheco, and more importantly, I've seen nothing to suggest that it's getting any better. In fact, I think I know this might be cope. I don't really care. I think it's more likely that Beshad Smith steals snaps than it is Pacheco gets a better share than he has now. Throwing it out there. On the flip side of that, and by very similar logic, I don't think Tutton steals this job, but he's got a whole better chance of doing that than Pacheco does of getting a better share than he has now. And the current share Pacheco has done nothing. The Chiefs throw the ball a crap ton. I think they're going to continue to do so. Their run game, I think that they're content to live without, clearly, considering they decided Breece Hall wasn't worth a third. So they don't care about the run game. So why should I care about the run game as a fantasy owner, to be honest with you? And if I did, I'd care about Kareem Hunt at this juncture, which feels disgusting to say in the big 2025. But nonetheless, Tutton at least has upside. I don't think that exists for Pacheco right now, which sucks because I really like Pacheco, but it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who runs with physicality, coming off of an MCL. He's wearing a knee brace there at practice. Kareem Hunt's going to be involved, especially in the goal line. To your point, there's not a lot of upside here. Beshad Tutton, he might not have to take over the job with ETN. We saw this past week, the guy had 32% snap count.
Yep.
And he had 15 carries for 70 plus yards and a touchdown right off the rip. And had he not gotten the ankle injury, it probably wouldn't have held a lot more because he had the hot hand. And Travis Etienne was, while he was out snapping Beshad Tutton was being very efficient with his touches.
And just to throw it out there, it was in the 40s when he got hurt. So through the first 3 quarters, it was like 42% to 58. Just throw it out there.
Yeah, no. So even if they close that gap, Jacksonville looks like they're just primed to become a run-first team. But between Brian Thomas being hurt, the issues that they've been having with the passing game anyway, it just seems like they're primed to be like, look, we're going to lean in the ETN and Beshad Tutton, and that's going to be our identity with the defense hopefully playing decently down the road. I just think that's what's lining up to be. That's what the usage is telling me they are starting to become. The only downfall right now with Tutton is that this ankle issue that he had in this game is not new. He's been dealing with an ankle issue all throughout the season here and there. In fact, that's why we had a number of weeks where he was being outsnapped by LaQuint Allen and getting like Ray Davis treatment on the Buffalo Bills, where it's like, we know you're the better back of the two as far as the backups are concerned, but you're actually getting the third least snap or the third most snaps because you're a little bit banged up and you're not actually getting out there and you're not the passing down back. So I see it was shaping up very, very similar. I don't think that's the case now. I think the cat is out of the bag in the sense of if Tutton's good to go, I think he's going to have like at least a 35% roll depending upon his health. But that is one of the downfalls of that. So Tutton's still enough of an upside play where he's a ticket. All right, Chase, do you have anything to add to that?
Jacobs, dude, you should have already had Emmanuel Wilson on your roster anyway, or you should be trying your damnedest to get him right now this week and for the rest of the season, just in case the Jacobs thing turns into something there, because Wilson has shown that he can perform when Jacobs is out. And there really is no one else there. Don't give me the Marshawn Lloyd coming back off injury because that'll never happen.
No Chris Brooks?
Was that?
No Chris Brooks for you?
No, not at all. No, the answer here is Tutton again. I mean, Pacheco's played himself into a full-blown committee, I think, regardless of the injury. That's just what it's going to be. I agree with Adam's point about Brashard Smith. And we've seen this team have a pass-catching back who has been a usable, viable fantasy asset in the past. And if Brashard Smith becomes that or continues to, kind of operate as that in this 15-person committee of theirs, I think that can continue. But I mean, Tutton did. He looked like the better back, the lead back in week 11 there. And keep in mind, ETN has a shoulder injury. He's limited in practice this week too. So there is the possibility that Tutton may not steal this job, but it may end up being his anyway if something ended up coming out of the ETN injury or, going forward there. Either way, between the two of them, Tutton is the only one of the two that has the blow up potential, because if he takes that job over, I think the sky's the limit. Whereas we've kind of seen and we know what Pacheco is.
Yeah, no, totally agree. By the way, Josh Jacobs, Tutton, Travis Etienne, all the injuries. Make sure you check us out tomorrow. I'll be with Dr. Brian Scott because we have a lot to discuss after a brutal week 11 with the amount of stars that went down and got injured. Bad timing indeed. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Is it finally time to drop Tony Pollard for Beshad Tutton? Tutton was a very popular player that was mentioned in these questions. In half-point PPR, or is that an overreaction? Chase, what's your reaction to this?
I hate it because I have Pollard as one of my 2 top running backs in a auction league that I am in this year. But yes, I mean, if you've reached this level of desperation, I just gave you the argument, or we just gave you the argument for Tutton over Pacheco. I'm not sure that Pacheco himself doesn't outrank Pollard at this point, honestly, even with the uncertainty surrounding his return to the lineup. Tutton does have the better rest of season schedule between the two of them, and he would be the man in Jacksonville if anything happened to ETN. I'm not listening to the LaQuint Allen stands here. I don't care about LaQuint Allen. It would be Tutton here. Neither Pollard nor Spears in terms of the Tennessee side of things here. Neither one of those guys is going to get you 10 plus fantasy points a week unless he scores a touchdown. But between the two of those guys, at least Spears gets receiving work and Pollard has not been getting that even. That offense in Tennessee is last, or they are next to last in scoring and in just about every rush category, anything you want to look at for rushing stats. So it really doesn't matter which one of those two guys has that job. So between the two of these guys, I mean, Jacksonville's middle of the pack offensively, but they're actually top third in a lot of the key rushing metrics like touchdowns, rush attempts. And if you've got a guy that can be the guy in an offense like that, I will take that over a guy who's in a timeshare and the lesser end of the fantasy timeshare in Tennessee. So no, this is, yes, drop Pollard for Tutton and just pray for the rest of your season.
Anything you want to add, Adam?
Nope. Pollard's situation's not going to change. Tutton's might, and that's better.
Pollard's only had 3 games this entire year where he's even been startable. He's even been in the top 24.
The reality of the situation is that they've got one game on their schedule left where they might be within 10 points scoring wise, and the receiving back is Spears. So what are you going to do with Pollard? Like, what is he going to do? In what world does he do anything? The 31st in rush attempts.
Yeah. He might not just be the receiving back. Spears is that he played over 50% of the snaps this past week. They might finally be transitioning to Spears just being the lead guy in general, which at this point, I don't know why you wouldn't, because you just need to play young guys. Calvin Ridley's out for the rest of the year. Alik Aomanor got injured. So I got Chamire Dike. Last man standing. Just play your young guys. You got nothing to lose. You're going to have a whole new coaching regime next year anyway. All right, so let's move on here because this one's interesting to me, and this is going to directly affect the Thursday night game. So Dalton Schultz quietly in every week tight end 1 now, or just a matchup streamer in week 12. Adam?
I think he's in the conversation. I want to see the consistency continue with Stroud before I fully am willing to say it, because he was a bit of a Davis Mills merchant here. I got 2.5 games with him. But there were some promising games in the couple weeks before with Stroud. It just wasn't quite as consistent as it's been the last 3 weeks or so. So I think he could be. I think he's in that 10 to 14 range. Whether he's truly a week-to-week starter, I think I want to give it a week, maybe 2. But he's definitely in the conversation.
Chase?
Yeah, I'm not a Schultz guy. I never have been a Schultz guy, really. He's a matchup streamer for me this season, but not for this week. I mean, Buffalo gives up the fewest points to opposing fantasy tight ends. This is a tough matchup. I agree with Adam's point, and it's completely valid that it's been Davis Mills. Davis Mills has been better for Dalton Schultz. Yes, there was maybe signs of hope-ish with Stroud, but he's been better with Mills. And Stroud in that concussion protocol after this game, he's going to have 10 days to get back and ready and clear that concussion protocol. It's a much better matchup here coming up in week 13 against Indianapolis. Sorry, Adam, but it just is for tight ends. Schultz is a streamer for me. He's still a tight end 2 type for me as opposed to a regular starter, but it is tight end. So if you want to take a shot, do it. He does have a good tight end schedule the rest of the season. So if you want to, if you're sitting in a bad position here, or you were streaming tight ends anyway, there's worse dudes to go with. But he's nothing more than a streamer. I'm not trusting him week in, week out right now, even at tight end.
I totally agree with you guys. I'm just going to outline both of your points. With Davis Mills and the games that he's played so far, so I'm counting the half game that we got 3 weeks ago, Dalton Schultz has been the tight end 10 on points per game. Previous, he'd been the tight end 22. And the big difference is the target consolidation. When Davis Mills is out there, he's looking for 2 guys. He's looking for Nico Collins, and he's looking for Dalton Schultz. His target share has increased from 20% to 24%. We're talking about a significant consolidation. When CJ Stroud gets back, because he is the better quarterback, and because we're seeing Jaden Higgins get more involved, and Jalen Noel get more involved, and the offense just in playing time in general, he's going to spread it around more. That's what he does. Outside of Nico Collins, CJ Stroud spreads the ball out. Dalton Schultz goes back to being irrelevant, in my opinion, when CJ Stroud does, in fact, take the field again. So I'm with you guys. He's a streamer for week 12. He is in my top 12. He got the 4 teams on bye. Not a lot of options. I do think he still has a strong target share with Davis Mills already officially starting in this game. But that's it. So let's move on here. I got defensive questions. Yes, I always love my defensive questions. So here's the deal. This person wants to know, should they drop the Patriots defense, who has been very good for fantasy, for the Browns defense for week 12? And is this a move that should also be made for the fantasy football playoffs? Chase, where are you falling this?
Listen, it's Cleveland over New England for this week, but I don't know if I want to drop New England right now. New England is going to be better for week 13. They have a better rest of season schedule. They have a better playoff schedule, in my opinion, than the Browns do. Cleveland is obviously better for this week. New England has a bye in week 14, so you can't just rely on New England. You can't not, pick up a defense at some point here in the next 2 weeks, but Cleveland has a terrible playoff schedule between Chicago, Buffalo, Pittsburgh in terms of the amount of points that those teams have allowed to opposing fantasy DSTs. So my take on this is if you are a contender, we're in the point of the year where you can start to lay down your seasonal end game here. You could try to hold both of these teams if you wanted to get you through these last several weeks here. It's not out of the question to hold two defenses on your roster at this point in the season if you're a contender and if you've got the room on your roster for it, because you're trying to set yourself up. You always need to be looking now a week, 2 week, 3 weeks ahead. And I just laid it out for you there. These teams kind of leapfrog each other in terms of who's better here for the rest of the season. So I don't know that I want to drop New England or anybody for the Browns, but the Browns are the better play this week. If you can hold them both, I say hold them both.
Adam, what do you say?
The addendum I'd make to that is I'm not always the biggest fan of, depending on roster size, holding two defenses. If your record is one where you really need this week, I'm okay with doing the Browns one, but I agree. I prefer New England's playoffs, to be honest with you. One, they both play the Bills, and that's a scary matchup. I mean, or the Ravens are scary as well, but honestly, on the season long, they haven't been. We'll see if that gets better, but to be honest with you, against the Browns, they didn't scare me, and I think New England's just as good, if not better. And the problem with the Browns, we see time and time again, every single year, these defenses that are really good for bad teams fall off by the end of the season because you lose things to play for. It happens without fail. The Bears last year, for example, were a top 11 defense, but during your playoffs, they had, I believe, one 15-point performance in the finals, but they got a 0 and a negative right before. After being, like I said, like a top 12 defense going into the playoffs, like a top 10 defense. But man, it's tough, especially, I hate to say it, but the way Shedeur looked last week, there could be a really dismal feeling in that locker room a month from now when we're talking about finals. So I'd rather have New England with a lot to play for, a hungry defense, a hungry team, and a defensive head coach who is trying to get things going in the right direction. I think that defense has been really good. They have a lot of talent, and they're playing ball like they have things to play for in December, and the Cleveland Browns certainly will not.
Hey, can I throw this? Can we just lay off of victimizing Shedeur Sanders every time something significant in a guy's life happens? I'm not a giant Shedeur fan, but can we stop prank calling him during the draft, robbing his home during his NFL debut and all that kind of stuff? Just let the kid live, for crying out loud. Back off, criminals.
Back off, criminals. That's your warning from Chase Thornton in his bar in his basement. Right. Oh man, I will say this: as far as his on the field play, he did not look like a real quarterback. I didn't think it could be worse than Dylan Gabriel. I was like, maybe it can. I don't know. We'll find out for sure this Sunday because he's going to be starting. To get back to this original question, I don't know if I agree with you guys about New England having a better playoff schedule. So both these teams play Buffalo. Both of them are bad, by the way. And my actual analysis for this question is: look, I'm picking up the Browns defense this week, and come week 14, if you're going to be playoff position by then, I'll probably be looking for other multiple defenses that I can just plug and play the matchups for those 3 weeks. That's my overall take. But as far as just these two, they both play Buffalo, but the Patriots also play the Ravens, which their offense really could be cooking by then. They just lost Milton Williams for the next 4 games. Milton Williams been a key anchor in that defensive line. And then they finally get a good matchup against the Jets week 17. Well, the Browns over here, they're not looking too shabby. Like I said, other than the fact they have to play Buffalo, they also just play Chicago Bears. And I know when you look at it statistically, the Bears have been a decent offense. But let's actually look at the film. Let's look at how Caleb Williams is really playing. And when he's with him hesitating every time he drops back, and then playing as a defense with that kind of pressure ability, with Myles Garrett, that could turn into an ugly turnover game very, very, very easily. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad matchup for the Cleveland Brown defense. And then week 17, I'll pull it up again because I just had it in front of me. They play the Steelers. I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph. It's not an offense that scares me, especially with the Browns. And they'll play their division tough, even if they are bad, to Adam's point, because they always do. So I think the Browns actually might have a better quote-unquote playoff schedule than the Patriots, because other than the Buffalo Bills, I'm not really afraid to play them against the Bears or the Steelers. So that's kind of my take on it. You guys do what you want to do. And in the meantime, we're going to dynasty temperature check you.
Hot air, so hot in here.
Very nice, very nice. On to the dynasty temperature check. We're going to start it off with, we got a couple Denver guys to talk about, and then we got one curveball for you. I had to keep the Denver talk going while they're on the bye. So RJ Harvey actually is the third most traded player overall, second most at the running back position. Just by the way, because we're also going to have the second most traded player and first most running back. The most traded player has continued to be AJ Brown, which is, we've talked about him before, so I didn't want to run that back, but bizarre situation there. To RJ Harvey, however, like I said, third most traded player overall, second most of the running back position. Some example trades for Mr. Harvey, who now seems to have the starting position for Denver it sure seems like they're talking about J.K. Dobbins might come back for like the playoffs or even into the playoffs, not the beginning of playoffs. It doesn't seem like he's coming back for the NFL regular season. Seems doubtful. Maybe, but doubtful. So at any rate, we're looking at with RJ Harvey, 2027 first round pick straight up, which is not bad, all things considered, plus a second for Troy Franklin, which is interesting. It got some like inner team trading going on there, plus DJ Moore. So RJ Harvey and DJ Moore for Daniel Jones. You've got RJ Harvey straight up for Devonta Smith. You've got RJ Harvey for Derrick Henry and a 2026 second, or you've got RJ Harvey for Michael Pittman straight up, which I want to hear what you guys think. But to me, it seems like the market has no idea what to do with RJ Harvey, because that is a wild range to me, at least. Yeah. The Chase, I see you laughing. What are your thoughts there?
No, yeah. These are some, and nobody wants to deal with RJ Harvey, or, we'll talk about him in a minute here probably, but Troy Franklin, it's just a weird mix of valuations here. I think Harvey straight up for the 27 first. Okay. Yeah, I can take that. I don't think either side comes out, crazy ahead of that in value. The Pittman trade straight up, I think, is fine. I'm okay with that trade as well, but you're going to add a second to Harvey to get Franklin. I think you're way underselling your second and your Harvey for Franklin, or you're very, very optimistic about Franklin. That's a little weird to me. The Jones trade is one where, if you're competing, and we've talked about it before, the vast majority of our dynasty teams are in superflex leagues. If you are contending, if you need a dude at quarterback right now, quarterback is going to be more important to you than a potential RB2 in Harvey, than a potential or current, whatever you want to call it, wide receiver 3 type in DJ Moore. I'm fine with overpaying a little bit for Daniel Jones to get him in on your roster there. The Henry and the 26-2, I think, wow, holy cow. Somebody really loves Harvey if they're willing to give up Henry and a 26-2 to get RJ Harvey, and that blows me away. I'm not sure on that one. So the valuations are all over the place here for me, but if you have Harvey and you can capitalize on the fact that everybody is excited and hopped up and like ready to go because they just lost J.K. Dobbins. Jump on that. I don't necessarily know that Harvey has crazy long-term value. He's looked okay. He's looked like he can be an NFL player at the running back position, but man, some of these trades are blowing me away.
Well, you said it best. It's a wide range. So here's what you have a mixture of. You have a mixture of the people who look at RJ Harvey and see a guy who has really good vision, really good ability to catch the ball, and not only is set up to likely be the running back the rest of your fantasy football league and playoffs, but also for next season, because they're probably not going to bring J.K. Dobbins back.
Yep. Then
you have the overreaction to him not playing well his first time out with that role this past week, of which I would just say it was the Kansas City defense. They hold a lot of running backs in check. There's not a big reason to overreact to that, but that's what I see when I'm looking at this deal. So yeah, I'll give you a personal thing here. I'm in a Dynasty league. I am in a position where I am trying to rebuild. I have RJ Harvey in there, and I was offered a 2026 third and a 2027 second. And I didn't just say no. I said, hell no. All right. So I'm more on the bandwagon of, I think RJ Harvey has a lot of nice traits that fit Sean Payton really well. And him being 24 years old, because he is a good receiver, it doesn't really bother me that he's a little bit older coming into this thing. I am not blindfolded by the idea and the probable fact that Sean Payton will likely bring in some sort of bruiser to pair with RJ Harvey next season. And that he's not going to just lean on RJ Harvey because, well, frankly, Sean Payton hasn't leaned on a single running back since the early 2000, late 2009s area of the decades. Okay, so that's okay. But with RJ Harvey being that, again, we look at Dynasty in a 2 to 3 year window. He's in a very promising situation to be very prominent and at least be a top 24 running back for fantasy football purposes for that time because of what he can do with the receiving the ball, with what he can do with his vision. Sean Payton appreciates those type of backs. So I wouldn't do half of these deals. Some of them, sure, but this is just a crazy overreaction one way or another, I believe, to a single game of him being in that role. What were you going to say, Chase?
Well, would it shock anybody if, say, like Rico Dowdle ended up a Denver Bronco next season? And then now Harvey was flipping nothing. I mean, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I'll do you one better. It wouldn't be shocking to me if Chuba Hubbard wound up on Denver because I think Carolina's going to find a way to get and probably keep Dowdle. But yeah, to your point, yes, I agree with that sentence. It would. Yeah. I'll do you one better.
There will be a veteran. There will be a veteran in the Mile High City, yes, to pair with RJ Harvey.
I would say I'll do you one better. I hope to God this doesn't happen as an RJ Harvey owner, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Hall became available that Denver doesn't go after a Bryce Hall to pair him up with RJ Harvey. I hope it doesn't happen, but just the point is that I think the Broncos will very much be in the market for another veteran type of running back next season.
I don't know how to feel about that idea. I'm going to be thinking about that the rest of the night. That sucks.
What do you think, Adam?
I'm kind of with you guys. I think that there's some low selling here with Harvey, but also if I was a contender, that Derrick Henry one would be
that would be hard to turn down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry in a second's nice.
What leagues are you people playing in? Yeah. Send me an invite. STT Chase, FFB. You guys, you see the name, it's all over the place. Just send me an invite.
Well, we'll keep going on the Derrick Henry train then. So he's the second most traded player overall and first most running back. Like I said, AJ Brown's the most traded player overall. Derrick Henry's value, we did talk about him earlier in the season as well, and I ignored that with AJ Brown. I ignored it with AJ Brown because it's not all that different, if we're being honest. The situation hasn't changed significantly. The trade values haven't changed significantly. People are trading him a lot because if you're a contender and if you wanted the points, it makes sense. Derrick Henry, on the other hand, the situation has changed a lot over the last month since we talked about him last. Where now, at the time, I think there was a lot of panic selling going on. Now, we're seeing trades for a 2026 first. We're seeing it for 2 2026 seconds. We're seeing a 2027 first. Xavier Legette, not my cup of tea, but some people's, plus a 2026 second rounder. And then the oddball of the group that I just had to throw in there, I couldn't help myself. I think it's an outlier, but I couldn't help myself, was Derrick Henry for Woody Marks straight up, which is just, it's something, that's for sure. But otherwise, outside of that seemingly outlier trade, and I saw the 2027 first one a couple times actually, so I think that's probably pretty close to his real value. I'm curious what you guys think, because I mean, if you're contending, then the points are awesome, and that's great. If you're in the middle, if you get down, like a running back in his 30s, if getting a first worth of value is an interesting proposition, even if you are someone who thinks that Derrick Henry, still has a year, maybe even 2 left, because which he over the last month he has looked like he has, next year in him.
So this is what I expect to see more of this. Like, this is the type of player where I would expect to see a wide range like we're seeing. Because it's all predicated on what the situation is, like you talked about, Adam. If I'm in a rebuild and I am 2 years plus away, I am taking either the 2026 first or the 2027 first, whichever one I get my hands on. I'm doing that 100%. The 2 seconds, I'd even consider that if I'm in a bad spot. So I don't think these trades are out of whack for Derrick Henry here. The Woody Marks thing is just like, look, Woody Marks might get replaced.
Loves Woody Marks.
He might get replaced next year, guys. Even if he's the dude the rest of the way, like he has in the past couple of weeks, fine. But he's still just a low-end RB2 at best the rest of the season. Regardless of that, he's a day 3 pick. We've consistently seen day 3 picks get replaced over and over and over again, or at least paired up with somebody. I don't know what the upside is coming with Woody Marks. But let me just make this overall point for this season for now. Derrick Henry has the 3rd easiest schedule for the rest of the season for running backs right now. And over the last 4 weeks, we've seen him start to become Derrick Henry again. He's 13th in fantasy points per game in half-point PPR leagues. He's been picking it up from the disappointing start that he had. And we know Derrick Henry's a second-half player. When it gets colder outside, he gets better. So you have the easy schedule. You already have signs of him picking it up. As long as Lamar Jackson's under center and that offense doesn't get torpedoed by Tyler Huntley or Cooper Rush, Derrick Henry's in for a hell of a second run. So if you're a team contending, and these are the type of values that I can give up, I'm seriously considering that as well on that side. So this is the type of thing I'm looking to see out of Dynasty trades. Go ahead, Chase.
No, I agree with you that it's an interesting situation. I mean, this year to me feels like the first time that we've seen Derrick Henry possibly losing the arm wrestling match to Father Time. But the first, I'll take the first for him because he is an aging running back and I can get some first. Okay, I'll take that. I agree with you that I would consider the 226-2s, especially depending on where those 2026-2s look like they might fall. And that's where you as a fantasy manager have to know your league, have to be understanding of what you're being offered. If the guy's offering you 2 late 26-2s, okay, well, whatever. But if he's offering you 2 early 26-2s, that's a different beast. The Woody Marks thing, outside of Woody Hayes, I challenge anyone to name a Woody Harrelson, I guess, but name a Woody that people can take seriously in their field outside of those 2 guys. I don't know. Woody Marks. We're talking about King Henry from Woody Marks.
No, I know. I'm going to be funny on the Woody thing real quick. Because while we all hate him and while we think he's inept, he is a billionaire and we are not. So as I'm throwing Woody Johnson out there. Successful in life.
Yeah, well, okay, yes.
Just say.
But can he run the football? Can Woody Johnson run the football? No, and the legit. Listen. Xavier Legette is a fine person, NFL player. He's fun to listen to in interviews because he talks with that crazy accent. But Legette and a 26-2 for Henry is a way undersell for me. So is the Marks thing. So if you have Henry and you're not a contender, I get wanting to get something for him, but aim higher than Woody Marks or Xavier Legette and a lottery ticket in the second there. You can get more. You will find someone who still esteems King Henry more than what you're getting out of him. So.
Yeah. I think that's pretty valid. Derrick Henry is someone who, if you're contending, you want him on your team. I think that's a simple way of saying it. If not, we'll talk about it. But if you're contending, you want Derrick Henry. back to Denver on their bye. We got to keep them in the news a little bit. Troy Franklin, unranked, but based on the RJ Harvey conversation, I was kind of curious. And there was a good enough volume that I said I decided that Troy Franklin would be a fun conversation. We got a wide range on him too. Ollie Gordon and Kyle Williams for Troy Franklin. We've got Troy Franklin plus a 2026 first for Brock Bowers. That one I find really interesting. Troy Franklin plus Quentin Johnston for DeAndre Swift. Troy Franklin straight up for a 2026 second, and Troy Franklin for Tyrone Tracy and a 2026 third. What I think is really interesting here, and we talked about it a little bit before the show, I think for most of these trades, it is less than what you would expect for a wide receiver getting his targets at his age, but more than what you would expect for someone with his draft profile, being like the 4th round pick or whatever, and being that he didn't do anything his rookie season. So it makes it really freaking interesting to value the guy, because there's precedence in terms of the draft stock, in terms of all the other things where it's hard to want to buy the guy. On the other hand, with the targets, what he has this season, especially the last 6 weeks, that still seems relatively low, except for maybe the Bowers one. So I'm curious what you guys think here. Dan, what do you got?
Well, so we've seen the best friend to the quarterback thing play out. I think you have an element of this with Troy Franklin and Bo Nix going back to Oregon and stuff like that. So people are looking at Troy Franklin as a real asset, not just for this season with the way it has played out to this point, but that this is going to continue following the next year. And I'm not here to say that it won't. Okay. Do you know how hard it is to get an elite tight end in a dynasty league? I don't know if you guys have played a lot of dynasty leagues. We have, and I assume if you're listening to this, you probably are at least in one. You know how difficult it is to get your hands on a featured. Like Brock Bowers is not going to be in this position that he's in for the rest of his career. He won't even probably be in this position next year, because there's no way in hell, at the very least, Chip Kelly's going to be the offensive coordinator of the Raiders next year. No chance. Zero. And Gino, as much as I'm not a fan of the guy, he can get the ball to the superstar players. He's proven that in Seattle. So they bring in anybody who's just, I don't know, mildly competent. And maybe that's not possible with Pete Carroll. I don't know. Because I will say this. If Pete Carroll brings back Shane Waldron, then you can take everything I just said here and throw it out the freaking window. But I have to believe that he's going to get somebody better than Chip Kelly at the bare minimum. And it's not hard to do. And Brock Bowers will be just fine on a more consistent basis. So
it's putting a lot of faith in that organization, but okay.
I know, but it's seriously hard to screw it up worse than, like, literally Luke Getsy was better than Chip Kelly. That's how low the bar is. Luke Getsy was better than Chip Kelly. That's how low it is. So that's what I'm saying. It's not hard to outdo what's being done right now with the Raiders. Anyway, I digress. I wanted to go on a diatribe about that one. The rest of these deals, I'm not doing. I'm not trading Troy Franklin and Quentin Johnston for DeAndre Swift. We don't know how much longer DeAndre Swift's got as far as being a real prominent fantasy football running back. The 2nd round pick, 2026, you probably drafted him in the 3rd round. So you're getting a round back of value for a guy legitimately could be the number 1 receiver for this team moving forward. Because it's not like Sean Payton's going to invest high draft capital. The highest draft capital they invested this past year was Pat Bryant. It was a day 3 pick. And he's going after that type of guy. The Troy Franklin mold is what he wants. And he doesn't spend high draft capital on wide receivers. So I don't think Franklin really gets replaced by anybody in the draft next season, which is why with his draft profile, I don't think it's as much of an issue because of where he is and the regime and how they value those things. So that's real interesting. And Tyrone Tracy, like they're moving on from Tyrone. As long as Cam Scatterbo doesn't get hurt and everything, like Tyrone Tracy's dead in the water next season. So most of this, I'm saying no. Because of the way they utilize Franklin, I don't see that stopping. You guys, they have taken a version of Oregon's offense, of what Bo Nix and Troy Franklin did together, and they're putting it on the Denver Broncos. That's what's happening right now. Yep. And that's why he's getting targeted. And that's why he's being decent. And isn't it super uber exciting? No. But does it make him a top 24 receiver when you're getting 8 to 10 targets every single week and he's been doing it for 5 weeks now? Yeah, it does. That's my sense on it.
Yeah.
No, I would refute anything in that if I could, but I can't. So I won't. I mean, yeah, Tyrone Tracy is a moot point because Cam Scatterbo became Cam Scatterbo. I wasn't crazy on Franklin coming into the draft process. When I saw that he went the same place Bo Nix did, it kind of piqued my interest. the performance that he's shown this season with Knicks, I'm much higher on Franklin than I was previously. There is something there. They're BFFs. They love their chuthers, and Bo Nix is going to continue to throw the ball Troy Franklin's way. So I agree with you. Outside of Bowers, who is the only truly elite option, of any of the names of any of the whatevers that we've thrown out there in these trade scenarios, Bowers is the only elite option that we've talked about. Do what you can. If you can do something like this, like I realized you're pairing Franklin, who has fantasy juice, with a first round pick for Bowers, but you are going to find a replacement for Franklin much sooner than you're going to find a replacement in your lineup for Brock Bowers. You grab Brock Bowers if you can. Outside of that, I agree with you, Dan. I don't really want to do any of these trades. I'm not excited about any of them. I think if you're trying to sell Franklin, don't undersell him, because he will have juice going forward. He's on a team with a quarterback who loves him, a team who believes in him. And his performance the last month and a half or so has shown that, yeah, he can be a fantasy asset, regardless of what any of us thought about him, a year and a half ago. So yeah, the DeAndre Swift thing, there's no guarantees. Tyrone Tracy, we already talked about, he's out. I don't want to undersell, for a second or a third, or Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon, I know everybody loves Ollie Gordon, but I'm not sure why, because he's definitely behind Devon Achane. Jalen Wright has been a disappointment across the board, but he's much faster than Ollie Gordon, and he's much closer to what Devon Achane gives you in that offense, and they want to use Devon Achane, not Ollie Gordon, in that offense. And Kyle Williams is for better or worse, he's a New England wide receiver, and we know their history with wide receivers and wide receivers they've drafted. I like Kyle Williams, but he's in New England. Take that for what you will. These are not great deals for Troy Franklin outside of the Bowers one.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The Bowers one was interesting, where I was like, all right, maybe there's something here, but otherwise, he seems very cheap for someone who, to your point, wide receiver 2 in his second year over the last month, a little bit longer. Yeah, after that kind of trade, I need a drink.
All right, I had to stand up early because I got so worked up about the Troy Franklin thing. I had to stay. I normally sit until it's time to mix a drink, but I got so worked up about this Troy Franklin ridiculousness that I had to stand up. But let's talk a little bit about DFS here and mix a cocktail as well. Interesting week. If you guys have looked at the betting lines, if you guys have looked at the point totals this week, there's 3 games that are over 50 points right now for a point total. There are a lot of 2-score and over 1 touchdown favorites for this week. So there's a lot of weirdness going on in terms of how Vegas sees the matchups coming up this week. But we are going to try and take advantage of that. And the first one that we're going to go with, as always, we try to start with our quarterback. We try to talk about our quarterback. Now, Dan tried to bait me into, giving Bryce Young some undue love, because I have been known to give Bryce Young some undue love. But I'm going to go with his opponent this week. We're going to go with Brock Purdy, that quarterback, for 5,900 here. Brock Purdy, listen, he came back last week and he picked up right where we hoped he would pick up. 3 touchdowns last week. He ended up the quarterback 6 in DraftKings scoring. For this week, he's only quarterback 11 in salary, but ECR wise, he's ranked quarterback 8. So you're already saving money in terms of just his ranking this week. He's the quarterback now. He's a top 10 quarterback on the year in points per game. And it's a small sample size because he missed so much of the year, but he's quarterback 9 in points per game here. Carolina, they're not a great matchup for fantasy quarterbacks, but I think part of that is because, teams don't feel like they have to throw on him a ton. But this game has a high point total. It's the Monday night game, by the way, if you guys haven't looked at that yet. It has a high point total, 48.5 points as of when I looked there on Sharp Football Analysis there. And Brock Purdy will be playing at home. Now, Carolina, they haven't been a great matchup for quarterbacks, but they have been vulnerable to the running back position have been vulnerable to the tight end position. Ask yourself, who really are the top 2 targets for Brock Purdy on that team? Oh, it's going to come out to be George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, his tight end and his running back. I like that matchup. I am willing to spend only $5,900 to get Brock Purdy on my team this week. Not a lot of expensive quarterbacks this week anyway, but I like paying $5,900 for Brock Purdy there. So we'll take him. And we're going to pair him with that tight end, George Kittle, at $5,200. I was really tempted. I was so tempted to go with Trey McBride, who is my guy. I love Trey McBride, and it's a good matchup this week. And I think that he's going to be their top receiver this week. But as Dan has pointed out repeatedly over the course of the season, Brock Purdy loves him some George Kittle, and George Kittle loves him some Brock Purdy. Those two are BFFs. And when Purdy gets back in the lineup, Kittle was going to take off. Well, guess what? He came back in the lineup, and last week, 2 of his 3 touchdowns went to George Kittle. Kittle was the tight end 2 in DraftKings scoring last week. Overall on the season, because he's missed some time, he's tight end 20, but he's tight end 6 in points per game. So he's already scoring a ton of points here, right?
Let me add a little quick fact. Steve Young and Brent Jones. Brock Purdy and George Kittle tied Steve Young and Brent Jones as far as the quarterback to tight end touchdown receptions.
Right there. Yes. And Dan would know that because he is the 49er fan here, but I'm throwing you threw me a bone with the first question of the day being a Bryce Young question. I'm throwing you a bone here talking about the 49ers in the DFS cocktail here. I mean, Kittle, listen, the feeling is mutual between the two guys. Like I said, Carolina has allowed the 11th most points to tight ends, so they are a good matchup there anyway. But in his last 4 games, George Kittle has caught 23 out of 24 targets for 226 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is on a roll, and he was on a roll before Brock Purdy got back. What do you think he's going to do now that his BFF, like I said, is back under center? We're going to pay less this week, like I said, at quarterback. Purdy's a little bit cheaper. I am honestly going to pay a lot less at running back this week because I think there are a ton of great affordable options at running back this week. So I feel like Kittle, even though he is the tight end, 5 in salary, he's expensive, and we don't typically like to spend up at quarterback or tight end, pardon me. I feel like he's a good value for this, and I feel like we've got the available salary because of where we're saving elsewhere there. Plus, if you look at it, when I looked at things, George Kittle grades out as the best value per point on the slate this week. So even though you're paying a little bit more than at tight end than you normally would, he's still going to, I feel, give you great value at that return. So I'm taking George Kittle. And then we're going to play back against these guys with my guy, Tetairoa McMillan. Now, again, Dan was trying to throw me a bone, and he's trying to bait me with the Bryce Young question, but this is how I'm going to get my exposure to Bryce Young, even though I'm not taking Bryce Young. I'm going to take Tetairoa McMillan in a good matchup here this week for $5,900. He's the wide receiver 19 in salary on DraftKings, but he is the ECR wide receiver 13 on the week. And on the year, he's a top 10 receiver overall. Okay. So last week was by far Tetairoa's best fantasy and overall game of his career to this point. So this might feel a little bit like point chasing, but I've told you, we've talked about it already on this show, that there's a good point total for this game on Monday night. Carolina is going to have to pass because they're trailing, and San Francisco does give up the 7th most points to the wide receiver position. So I feel like this is a good spot for Tetairoa McMillan. If anybody is going to score on this team against the 49ers, it's going to be Tetairoa McMillan. And when I do my rankings and my projections, Tet grades out just behind Amon-Ra St. Brown in terms of value per dollar this week. And because we're saving money elsewhere, Amon-Ra St. Brown's not off of your radar if you want to put him in your lineup. But I am taking Tet McMillan this week and loving it at $5,900. And then the fourth guy that we're going with before we start to mix up our cocktail here is going to be Kenneth Walker, the running back for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, he's a cheap play this week. He's only $5,400 this week. And that's only 26th among running backs in terms of their DraftKings salary. And he's ranked this week as right about there, right? Running back 20. But Tennessee's been terrible against the run this year. We've talked about how bad this team is, period. Seattle's tied for the biggest favorite this week. They are over a 2-touchdown favorite this week. They're 13.5-point favorites so far. And we're talking about a team in Tennessee that gives up a ton of points. They're 7th. I think they give up the 7th most points to opposing running backs this week. Now, Seattle is on the road, but when you're facing a team as bad as Tennessee is, I'm not letting that kind of deter me. Zach Charbonnet, if you want to go that direction, he's an okay dart throw too, because he's going to get some short yardage situation type things. So if they're on the goal line, they might throw Zach Charbonnet in there. I don't expect Tennessee to stop him either, but for my money and for what they've been doing lately, I'll take Kenneth Walker all day long there at 5,400. So we're going to roll with Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Teteroa McMillan, and Kenneth Walker. I would like to tell everybody to keep an eye on the injury situation around the league, because there are some possible excellent values that we'll maybe talk about in a minute here. But let's get to our drink here. We're talking about the Divisional Rivalry. That's what we're going to call this drink this week. This is a loose take on a drink, if you look it up, called the Sibling Rivalry. But we're going to put together some ingredients that might, you think, fight against each other, but end up being a beautiful thing in the overall. Okay, so we're going to take first off an ounce of bourbon and an ounce of rye. We're having two different types of whiskeys here, but an ounce of bourbon and an ounce of rye. We're going to put those into our shaker here full of ice. Then we're going to add to that a half an ounce of pear liqueur. I'm going to put some sweet into that. Then a half an ounce of simple syrup and a half an ounce of lemon juice. Those are going to balance off the whiskeys there. We're going to put that into a glass full of ice, into a shaker full of ice. And we're going to shake that up. While I shake that up, and before I get on to how we construct the rest of this cocktail, Dan, Adam, your thoughts so far on either the 49er Carolina matchup, Kenneth Walker, or guys that you like to see in your lineup? Go ahead.
Well, those are all values that I've definitely highlighted myself, but I would also highlight Jacoby Brissett this week at $5,300. They're just going to throw. And Jacksonville, typically speaking, I know it didn't happen against the Chargers, but typically speaking, is a pass funnel team that you can attack. This game being in Arizona, I think that plays out a little bit better in their favor. If you really want to go for tournament leagues in particular, you want to take a deep lottery ticket, it would be a Chimere Dike. He's only $4,000. I talked about it earlier. Aomenor is out. Calvin Ridley is out. He's the last man standing. There's already been a rapport with him and Cam Ward going against Seattle. They're going to have to throw. And I am not afraid to pay up for the tight end position and go with Trey McBride at $6,800, who's been on an absolute tear, and pair him up with Jacoby Brissett this week since Brissett's been the quarterback. So those are some things I'm looking at. Adam, what do you got?
Yeah, another one to throw out. Derrick Henry against the Jets seems awesome, especially with the money we've saved at a couple of these spots so far. I think that's a real option. If you want to go on the other end, stick it with the cheap guys we've been throwing out. Kareem Hunt is a really cheap option at running back, who I think has a good shot. Obviously, you want to keep an eye on the Pacheco situation, but even then, he is still the goal line back. And I have a feeling that with Charvarius Ward coming off the IR, that they will be running in the red zone. So he's someone who I think is really interesting. But I like the lineup you put together.
Nope. All good points, guys. I appreciate all of those guys here. Like I said, I want to keep an eye on the Josh Jacobs injury in Green Bay, because if he is out, Emmanuel Wilson makes a great affordable play. It's a good matchup this weekend against the Vikings. Likewise, I am watching the Jaylen Warren situation in Pittsburgh, because if Jaylen Warren is out, Kenneth Gainwell makes a great play for Pittsburgh. I also like T. Higgins this week in a decent matchup with the Patriots, because Jamar Chase is out, suspended, and you can't go wrong with Trey McBride. It's a great matchup this weekend anyway against the Jaguars. He's going to get targeted, but we're already using Kittle. So if there was ever a week that you might want to use two tight ends, you probably could get away with this week. But at any rate, We shook our cocktail. We strained it into a glass with ice. Now that glass that we're using, the rocks glass we're using, we're going to rinse that before we pour our drink into it. We're going to rinse that with cinnamon schnapps. If you don't know how to rinse it, you take about a quarter of a teaspoon or so, put it in the glass before you put any ice or anything in it. Kind of roll that all around so that it kind of coats the inside of the glass. Toss out the remainder. So we're going to rinse that glass with cinnamon schnapps. We shook up our cocktail. We poured it in. We've got it there. We're going to put a cinnamon stick in that thing for a nice little garnish there to look good. And that is going to be your divisional rivalry right there. Good luck to everybody. Slange va on the drink and good luck on your daily lineups. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers indeed. Before we get off the show, Keon Coleman is going to be benched again against the Houston Texans. If you're listening or watching the show before that Thursday game, he has pissed off some guys behind the scenes. All right. With that, hopefully we haven't made you mad because hopefully you've been dominating by watching or listening to Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app or on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. Guys, we'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Brian Scott with the injury reports. And of course, on Saturday with Chaz Flaherty of Sports Betting Weekly as we line your pockets green. So we'll see you then.